After Hurricane Hazel claimed 81 lives, destroyed nearly 2,000 homes, and cost us $1.3 billion in 1954 dollars, Ontario strengthened the mandate for conservation authorities to protect us from flooding. Their work has been a huge success. A resident in the Grand River watershed pays just $2.81 per year to protect their lives and property from flood damage. It's a bargain, especially when you consider that the average cost of cleaning up a basement flood is $43,000. So, Speaker, one of the tragic lessons we've learned from COVID is that failing to listen to scientists can have catastrophic consequences. So I ask, why is the Premier risking people's lives and billions of dollars in property damage by gutting the nonpartisan, scientific-based expertise conservation authorities?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The Government House Leader to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I completely disagree with the member opposite. In fact, the proposed legislation does just the opposite. It refocuses conservation authorities on their core mandate, as the member mentioned opposite, Mr. Speaker, on flood mitigation. That's what is very, very important. It changes the composition of the boards of conservation authorities to ensure that elected officials are part of those boards. And, Mr. Speaker, it goes a little bit further than that. It ensures that there's representatives of the agricultural community on that, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the honourable gentleman. The conservation authorities do have an important role to play. And that role is flood mitigation, and this legislation will redouble their efforts on that, Mr. Speaker, while making it more accountable to the people. Thank you.
Supplementary question.
Speaker, with all due respect to that answer, I would suggest that the Government House Leader actually read the legislation, because what it does is it takes the power of conservation authorities to make science, evidence-based decisions and puts it in the hands of the minister to make political-based decisions that can put development in the wrong place. Here's the bottom line, Speaker, and this is something I really believe the government needs to understand. When you allow development to happen in the wrong places, it can have catastrophic consequences. When you pave over wetlands and green space, there is no place for floodwater to go. It can only go into our streets. It can only go to places that damage our infrastructure. It floods people's basements. So the Premier says, call me if you have a problem. So if your basement is flooded, can people call the Premier and ask for the $43,000 to clean up the mess this decision will make?
The Government House Leader to reply.
I guess one would wonder, Mr. Speaker, if the conservation authorities were doing such a good job, why there are flooded basements at all across the province of Ontario, Mr. Speaker. What the member talks about is completely wrong. What we're doing is strengthening conservation authorities to do exactly what he says, to bring it back to its core mandate, Mr. Speaker. Now, I know that the members of the opposition are opposed to accountability, and that's why they are against the changes that we're proposing on the conservation authorities, by making sure that elected officials are ordered. I know that they're not in favour of enhancing the roles of agricultural communities when it comes to conservation. We believe just the opposite. That's why this legislation does that, Mr. Speaker. But I agree with the honourable gentleman. For far too long, our conservation authorities have strayed from their mandate. That's why we have flooding in basements. That's why the people of Mississauga have had to endure so many challenges. This legislation brings back to the original mandate, Mr. Speaker, while making it more responsible to elected officials.